kind of you know, there's so many of these issues that could arise with regard to your rights. Let me give you some summaries first. And this is the truth, and I think you realize this, but I think maybe somebody needs to say it directly. Unfortunately, there are some people who don't want you to get involved. They don't want citizens to get involved. They liked it when nobody was watching. And they want to try to see if they can intimidate you into not being a good citizen. And we've seen that in a lot of situations. And what I would say to you is, understanding that, it's very important for you to be prepared, to know what you're doing, to be professional in the way you do things, and just to be ready. And then to, you know, again, I can't give you a legal answer for every situation you're going to run into. But all you need to know is there's at least some place you can call and ask a question. And so that's one of the reasons why I'd like to make sure you're getting our email alerts and things, because it'll remind you that there's a place you can call. If you run into something, you go, wow, I wonder what the law is on this, or wow, we found something really explosive. I bet, you know, even if we do everything we're supposed to do, somebody's going to attack us. So I better call and make sure we have, you know, legal protection. Feel free to do that, and just know we're here. Examples of this would be Hannah Giles. Hannah Giles, who dressed up like a prostitute, and, you know, as a 20-year-old girl, basically her and James O'Keefe took down one of the mightiest, you know, organizations in the country by just being citizen journalists. And so what did they do? Acorn sued her for defamation, for damaging their reputation. Not like that's possible. The first lawsuit was in Maryland. The second one was in Philadelphia. The third one was in California. The first two we've had dismissed, and now we're dealing with California. But this is all about trying to destroy her, trying to intimidate any future citizen journalist, you know, trying to make sure that there aren't more hacks in the future. And so we're going to fight with everything we've got on the First Amendment. The Watauga case is a good example. I mean, this is in Texas. It's not somewhere else. So it shows it happens, you know, even in conservative places. But you have our client who was actually arrested and put in jail for holding a political sign. 5 to 6 hours in jail, and a lot of cities have these kinds of things. And he, after he got out of jail, we had the hearing in front of the judge, and we said, look, if your statute is true in what it says, then this would mean that if I have a lapel pin that mentions a political candidate or something, and I walk down a public sidewalk, now I got a political message on government property, that would be a crime. They said, yes, that's right, it is a crime. Said, so that would also mean if I drive my car with a political bumper sticker down your street, it's a crime. And they said, yes. At that point, the judge agreed with us that the case should be dismissed, and all the charges were thrown out. But the statute was still in the books. So we have, you know, filed a lawsuit to make sure this doesn't happen to anybody else. It's kind of basic, but, you know, in this country, you don't have to get permission to from the government before you speak. That's kind of a basic principle. But it just, when you do the things that you have a right to do, just realize that, again, there's a place you can call to get help. The speaker case is another example, and this ties into the cases with King Street Patriots. This is just a few years ago. The speaker statute that was, for those of you who are in Texas, 3 years ago, or I guess it would be 4 because it's every 2 years, but let's say 4 years ago, during the speaker race, if you had spoken out about who the Speaker of the House should be in Texas, that was a crime, and you could have gone to jail for up to a year. And we said, you know, excuse me? And they said, well, you can't sue the entire legislature. And we said, oh, that sounds fun. So we sued the legislature, and they showed up with 5 attorneys from the Attorney General's office to defend it. And anyway, we ended up winning, which is why you saw this conversation about the speaker race. But I say this because realize that these lawsuits that were filed against King Street Patriots, number one, they're baseless lawsuits. They're an attempt to intimidate One of them is a defamation case. Again, it was the Acorn-like group, Houston Votes. It says their reputation was defamed. You know, we'll see. And number one, a corporation can't sue for defamation. So this is the kind of thing that just shows what a fallacy these lawsuits are, but they've got plenty of attorneys lined up. The other one was a lawsuit filed by the Democratic Party, coincidentally on the first day of early voting. You know, there is a lot of politics in what they were doing, but I would point out, and I just wanted to read you one little thing. These campaign finance laws, even the ones passed in Texas, usually, in my opinion, are just evil. They're attempts to attack normal citizens, to try to keep them out of the political process, to try to criminalize behavior that should never be criminal. And one example is, let me get to this. I'll just read you. This is out of our counterclaims. Because kind of what we did in this is, number one, what they did is they said, well, King Street Patriots is really not a nonpartisan group. Really, they're funneling money to the Republican Party. Number one, they don't have any money. Number two, they're certainly not funneling anything to the Republican Party. They're just lies. But secondly, and you can do this as lawyers, and this is a good thing. We said, look, number one, these are all untrue. But number two, even if this were some sort of political group, which is not, every one of these statutes you're using, they're all unconstitutional. And so this has given us a chance to just try to wipe out about 10 Texas laws that never should be on the books. And I'm just going to give you an example of one from our, to show you how outrageous this is. This is, in Texas, this Texas law, and this is a law that says that any corporation that basically makes any sort of political contribution, here's the result. Texas law imposes a criminal sanction of up to 10 years imprisonment and a minimum of 2 years imprisonment for doing nothing more than engaging in truthful political speech. Truthful. Totally truthful. Okay? Texans risk greater penalties for engaging in truthful political speech than for engaging in forgery, for burglarizing a commercial and retail establishment, for engaging in public lewdness, for indecent exposure, for criminally negligent homicide, and I could go through a long list. The same penalty for engaging in truthful political speech in Texas is, we were trying to find out, well, what is this level? It's making a terroristic threat that puts the public in fear of death or serious bodily injury. So we treat terrorists in their speech the way we treat truthful political speech. We're hopefully going to knock all those down. So I'm out of time, but I just wanted you to know that, this is, I'm thankful, number one, that King Street Patriots didn't get intimidated, that they did the right thing, that they've been very professional about what they've done. But we're going to have to keep fighting these lawsuits, and you just need to be ready that somebody might try to intimidate you. And just know that there's a place to call if that happens. And I want to end with one really short story, and that is the case I told you about with the kid with the candy cane, the legend of the candy cane. There was an exact replica of that a year later in Mansfield, Texas. A little kid that at the Christmas party wanted to bring that to his friends. They were all giving gifts. And his teacher said, you can't do that, violation of separation of church and state. And so he comes to his dad, and his dad calls us. He said, what do I do? And we said, well, let's see if it's true. You go to the principal. You go to the teacher. He goes to the teacher and the principal, and he said, yeah, they told me the same thing, violate separation of church and state. So he came to us, he said, what do we do now? And we said, well, what we normally do is we'd send a demand letter to the school. We'd say, look, here's the law. You're in violation of the law. Let's get you in line, or we're going to have to file a federal lawsuit. But by this time, we knew that he was a printer, and that 70% of his business was the school district. And so we told him, we said, look, we can't tell you to do this. This could destroy your business. And I'll never forget what he said. He said, send a demand letter. My son's watching me. And, you just want to stand on your chair and cheer. But to me, that's exactly what you're doing. Your children, your grandchildren, they're watching. And that's why we're here, to try to make sure and give you the ability to do what you're being called to do. So always feel free to call us. We're happy to help. and answer any questions we can. And